Al Jazeera is bringing a criminal complaint to the International Criminal Court against the State of Israel for the killing of their journalist, Shireen Abu Akleh. There was one shooting attack in Gush Etzion and another one on Highway 6. And the Biden administration has once again proved just how much they really hate Israel. I'm Justin, and this is the Israel Guys. Hello and welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Make sure to like this video, also subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of the content that we're bringing to you every single week. We're going to jump right in here with the news this morning. So, Al Jazeera, the Qatar-owned news media, very left-wing, anti-Israel, they recently announced that they're intending to file a criminal complaint with the International Criminal Court, or the ICC, in The Hague against the State of Israel. And they're talking about because of the death of one of their journalists, Shireen Abu Akleh. The petition is accusing Israeli occupation forces of intentionally killing Shireen Abu Akleh. As you guys know, back in May of this year, the IDF went into Jenin, which is just north of Nablus. It's a terrorist hotbed. A lot of terrorism was coming out of there in the months preceding the operation. So the IDF went into Jenin to take out these terrorists. There was a gun battle between Islamic Jihad terrorists and the IDF, and unfortunately, in the crossfire, one of the reporters who was reporting there from Al Jazeera, Shireen Abu Akleh, was killed. The IDF, they've done lots of investigations into this, an internal IDF inquiry, as well as forensics tested by the U.S. and Israel on the bullet which killed her. They both failed to establish whether the fatal round was fired by an Israeli soldier or an Islamic Jihad terrorist. Now, Al Jazeera, now they're claiming that they obtained new evidence showing that Abu Akleh was directly fired at by IDF soldiers. They said, quote, "The claim by the Israeli authorities that Shireen was killed by mistake in an exchange of fire is completely unfounded." After Al Jazeera formally files its petitions with the ICC, Abu Akleh's family is expected to hold a joint press conference with Al Jazeera's legal team at The Hague. So that will be interesting. But, okay, this is the International Criminal Court. This is for war crimes. This is for last resort, for horrible atrocities happening in the world, and Al Jazeera is bringing a petition to the International Criminal Court against Israel when there's absolutely no evidence that she was shot by an IDF soldier. The IDF has been super transparent throughout this whole thing. They've wanted to do investigations, and actually the ones who have been hiding something have been the Palestinian Authority. So even if the IDF did shoot Abu Akleh, which they said there's a possibility that that could have happened, and they've been willing to take responsibility if it was proved that that happened, there's absolutely no way that this was done on purpose. The IDF is one of the most moral armies in the world. They have a super high standard of procedure. So I'd say there is just as much possibility that she was killed by an Islamic Jihad terrorist. But Al Jazeera refuses to say that, and instead they want to blame Israel because they hate Israel so much. Prime Minister Yair Lapid responded to this petition. He said, quote, "No one will investigate IDF soldiers, and no one will preach to us about morals and warfare. Certainly not Al Jazeera." Defense Minister Benny Gantz said, quote, "I express my condolences following the passing of Shireen Abu Akleh. At the same time, we must remember that this was a combat scenario which was investigated thoroughly. I suggest that international officials and Al Jazeera representatives go investigate what is happening to reporters in Iran and nearby regions where Al Jazeera operates. There is no other military that operates under the moral standards of the IDF, and I would like to emphasize my full support and that of the entire defense establishment to the commanders and soldiers who are defending the citizens of Israel." Yes, guys, this is absolutely ridiculous that Al Jazeera is bringing a criminal complaint against the state of Israel. They're not talking about anything that's going on in Iran right now with the protests. And when there's a lot of war crimes, there are a lot of human rights violations, all in many other countries around the world. And they're not choosing to focus on that, but instead choosing to focus on this one action. and focus on Israel. Thankfully, the U.S. State Department did say they oppose this action by Al Jazeera. So moving on, there was a shooting attack on Monday night on a security guard in Gush Etzion. So two terrorists opened fire on a guard close to the town of Karmit Zur. The guard was driving on the road which surrounds the town, patrolling the area to keep the town safe. And he was shot at. The NIDF spokesperson said, quote, "During the night, we received a report of a shooting towards the town of Karmit Zur, which is located in the Etzion Regional Brigade. Searches in the area by IDF forces revealed bullet casings. No one was injured and no damage was caused. There are no injuries to our forces." Thank God there were no injuries in here. It could have been worse. Thank God he protected this security guard. But in related news to this, one man was seriously injured and a second moderately injured in a drive-by shooting on Highway 6. So this incident happened near the Ben Shemen Junction outside of Modi'in, southeast of Tel Aviv. So according to my understanding, there was an accident with a luxury car inside of a tunnel. They had an accident, and then a gunman in a vehicle drove by and opened fire on them while the paramedics and the EMTs were treating them for their injuries. United Hatzalah volunteer EMTs Sleman Heen and Mohammed Ras were driving in a private ambulance in the vicinity when they noticed that traffic had suddenly come to a standstill by the entrance to a tunnel. They thought it was a car accident, so they turned on their lights and sirens, got into the emergency lane to get up ahead. Once they got into the tunnel a little bit more, they saw a damaged luxury car that seemed like it had crashed into the wall of the tunnel. Inside were the two guys who were injured. They were called what happened next. The paramedics, one of them said, quote, "We were convinced that this was a regular car accident, and even the type of injuries seemed consistent with this scenario. While I was treating the man with the head injury, I heard a motorcycle approach us from behind. Suddenly, a man stood behind me and started shooting at point-blank range. Bullets flew between my legs, and I didn't have time to move. He fired off a few rounds, got back on his motorcycle, and sped off. Thankfully, when the shooting ended, I was unharmed, but two bullets hit the patient in his lower limbs, and then he started losing a lot of blood." So a few minutes later, intensive care ambulances arrived at the scene and transported the injured to Rabin Medical Center and Sheva Tel HaShomer Medical Center. Their paramedics added that, quote, "This is not the first time treating gunshot wounds, but it's a different feeling to get shot at while providing treatment. I'm still trying to take in what happened. I'm thankful that I wasn't injured and that we were able to stabilize the patients and help save their lives." Guys, continue to pray for the injured who were injured in this attack. Pray that they will fully recover from this shooting attack, which is quite unusual. There was a stone-throwing attack in Hebron on Tuesday night. A 19-year-old man was lightly injured. The Mogen David Adom paramedic who was dispatched to the incident was shocked to discover that the injured person was actually his son, who was injured by broken glass from this rock. So the victim was treated by the MDA team, and then he was taken to the Soroka Medical Center with injuries to his face and limbs. There's been a lot of attacks happening in the last few days because at the same time as this stone attack, a driver arrived at the gate of the settlement of Carmel. He reported that a kilometer away, north of the settlement, he was shot at by two masked men who were trying to block the road. The Army, they conducted searches in the area. The story is still developing, so more news will be coming out on this story. So, 2 days ago, there was an annual event from the anti-Israel group J Street. Now, they call themselves pro-Israel, but they're pretty left-wing and they're anti-Judea and Samaria. They're pro-two-state solution. They've made some pretty anti-Israel, you could say, statements in the past. So they held an annual event, and the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, spoke at this event. He started out by saying that the Biden administration would hold Israel to, quote, "to the mutual standards we have established in our relationship over the past 7 decades and work relentlessly to prevent any parties from taking actions that could raise tensions and push the two-state solution even further out of reach." So he started out about the two-state solution. The Biden administration is very supportive of a two-state solution. And despite the recent wave of Palestinian Arab terrorist attacks in Israel, as you guys know, there's been rising violence in Judea and Samaria, specifically from terrorism. There's been a rise in terrorism. Blinken falsely claimed that, quote, he had seen dramatically higher levels of violence in the West Bank perpetrated by both Palestinians and Israeli settlers. He went on to say, "We will also continue to unequivocally oppose any acts that undermine the prospects of a two-state solution, including, but not limited to, settlement expansion, moves toward the annexation of the West Bank, disruptions to the historic status quo at holy sites, demolitions and evictions, and incitement to violence." There's just one thing that Antony Blinken is missing, and that is he did not mention even once the rise in terrorism from Palestinian Arabs. Guys, there's been so much terrorism happening recently. But what is he talking about? He's talking about the things that would go against the Biden administration's agenda, and that is for a two-state solution. He's saying settlement expansion, that is the Jews' right to build in their own homeland, moves toward annexation of the West Bank, taking back what is rightfully theirs legally. This is not illegal at all. Disruption to the historic status quo at holy sites. Jews being able to pray at their most holiest site in the world, the Temple Mount. He wants to maintain the status quo so that Jews cannot pray at their holiest site. And then demolitions and evictions, and he did say incitement to violence, but not once did he mention the word terrorism. He also said that while his administration is still forced to continue to, quote, recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, it remains central to the national visions of both Palestinians and Israelis and must be a city for all its people. A little bit contradictory. Blinken also blasted Israel. He said, quote, the reality is that today, Palestinians and Israelis do not enjoy equal measures of freedom, security, or opportunity. He also applauded the newly appointed ambassador to the Palestinians, Hadi Amir, who is a terrorist supporter. So, yes, this J Street event was just another reminder of how much the Biden administration hates Israel. A great excuse for Antony Blinken to say his anti-Israel rhetoric here. But that's not all. Ned Price, recently, he failed to push back on a reporter's accusation that Israel was perpetrating war crimes against the Palestinians. So during a daily press briefing, a reporter asked Ned Price. He said, quote, I mean, what we have seen in the past couple weeks is really an uptick of Israeli aggression against the Palestinians. We see war crimes being committed in front of everybody. So that would not bother the United States of America, despite the fact that these guys, talking about religious Zionism party head Bezalel Smotrich and Otzma Yehudit leader Itamar Ben-Gvir, have such a long rap sheet. So, Ned, what was Ned Price's response?
So whether the question is government formation or any other hypothetical, we just don't entertain those types of questions. It doesn't do us any good to comment on something that may or may not come to pass. When it comes to governments that haven't been formed, I've been asked this question from this podium for any number of democratic countries around the world. How, whether, will we work with various individuals around the world? And our answer is always the same. We are going to judge a government on how it governs once it is in place, on the policies that it pursues.
Ned Price also forgot something. What was that? He forgot to answer the reporter about the war crimes that he accused of Israel of. He did not say anything about this. And he also failed to correct the reporter's assertion in a follow-up question after the meeting that an Israeli policeman had shot, quote, at point blank an unarmed Palestinian, when in fact the officer in question had fired on a terrorist who was actually attacking him and who had a knife. Guys, I covered this on a show 2 days ago. If you haven't seen this, go back and watch it. It's a great show. The mainstream media used this for their good. They wanted to blame Israel. A lot of the media were saying that Israel had shot point blank a Palestinian and that it was in a scuffle that this IDF officer killed an innocent Palestinian, when in fact this guy was actually attacking Jews with a knife and the policeman shot him dead. Guys, I want to close out with a headline that the mainstream media will never cover just because it goes against their narrative, and that narrative is to blame Israel for everything. This headline makes Israel look good, therefore the mainstream media will not pick it up. So, a little Palestinian boy from Gaza just became the 3,000th patient to get life-saving heart surgery in Israel. So 5-year-old Amir Yehia Mabchuk, he recently got free life-saving surgery through Save a Child's Heart at Sylvan Adams Children's Hospital in Holon, Israel. Amir lives in Jabalia, which is north of Gaza City, with his parents and younger sister. Their family doctor identified a heart defect resulting from a blockage in one of his coronary arteries when Amir was just 2 months old. His mother said, quote, "Already at that age, we understood that Amir would require an operation to fix the defect." So on November 20th of 2022 of this year, his open heart surgery took place, and it was a complete success. Now the little boy is recovering at the new Sylvan Adams Children's Hospital on the Wolfson Medical Center campus. His mother, Maha Mabchuk, said, quote, "I know there is always tensions between Gaza and Israel, but that doesn't change my child's story. I trust the Israeli doctors, and I know they will save my boy's life." Guys, don't listen to the lies of the mainstream media that want to paint Israel in a bad light. They want to paint Israel as the aggressors. Even the U.S. painting Israel, they're saying there's violence by Israeli settlers. Don't believe the lies from Al Jazeera, who are saying that the IDF purposely killed their journalist, Shireen Abu Akleh. Guys, let us know what you think in the comments below. Tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening in the land of Israel. We'll be back every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.